This is Justin. Evan's with me. I think a game happened this weekend, Evan.
If you play the same team twice in what is this? A month and a half.
6 weeks.
Twice in 6 weeks, and the first game is a 4-2 win, and the second one's a 0-0. Is there a way to go back and divvy up some of the goals from the first game to this one?
As long as they're both 2-1 wins for the Union, that's fine.
Well, and it's weird that we have to sit here and be like, and I mean, it's the sort of the Carnell problem, I guess, what we're going to run into early season, where it's everything but the finishing. More on that in a second, I suppose. But to be able to sit here and say we've won a season series against the team, A, in April is absurd, and then B, we've won a season series against the team. So, if you do that against everybody that you come across, or at least everyone in your conference, you're in the playoffs.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Your big picture, I don't think we're going to Orlando game a whole lot because, chances were had no one finished them. Dre made a couple nice saves, but you can't complain about taking 4 from 6 from an in-conference rival.
No, for sure. I think it's funny. So, one of the other soccer podcasts I listen to is Soccer Over Gotham, and they had a 0-0 draw, a week or so ago. And, starting their podcast out, they were like, yeah, a game happened. The Gotham played keep away from Houston for 90 minutes and nobody scored. That was it. And I kind of felt like that's what this game was for us. It was like Philly kept the ball for a good portion of 90 minutes, and at the end of the day, neither team could score. I kind of felt like that was going to be the destination of this game anyway, because both on the MLS preview show and then once our broadcast started, they were like, oh, the Union have 15 goals this season. Orlando has 13, and they're both high-flying offenses, and this is going to be the most exciting game of the night. And as soon as all that's said, you're like, oh, 0-0 draw. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, you're like, good news, bad news. 4 and 2 of those goals, respectively, were right off the rip in Orlando about a month ago. So I don't think either team wants a repeat of that, and we sure didn't get it. So that's exciting, I guess. We're playing New York this weekend. That'll be something. I know you have to literally stop doing this podcast to do a preview with those guys. So I think for very in-depth look at that, go listen to that, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. I do want to come back to something you did say. It always Andre Blake is in a weird place for me of obviously he's still a great keeper. He still has a lot of talent. And then there's those weird games where something's going on with his hamstring and he can't take goal kicks. It's like all these things. And you're like, are you okay? Are you not okay? Are you whatever? And then he makes some saves like he makes the other night. And I go, okay, you're fine. You're good. And
so I think I'm the worst person to talk to about Dre using his hamstrings is oh, I can't do goal. Brother, you've never been able to hit goal kicks. The best thing about this system is you don't have to do it anymore. That's been my favorite thing about Bradley Carnell is we are now the team that everybody hates because we take 5-yard goal kicks or whatever it is, 8, whatever, where he just shifts it to someone else and then they hoof it. And that is, as someone who's always loved Dre as a shot stopper, but hated him as someone to try to spring an attack because he can't, it's perfect. It is always worrying because in the years that we've done this podcast, whenever he goes, you always look over to the bench and go, oh no. Because the murderer's row of backups he's had for all of the talk of goalkeeper academy FC that the Union have been in the past, CJ Dos Santos, Chris Shakes, etc. The only guy that's ever panned out has been Andrew Rick, and that's even a really small sample size.
Yeah, I mean, you could kind of add John McCarthy to that list too, but most of McCarthy's success was not in a Union kit.
No, yeah, I mean, I can't argue with MLS Cup winner John fucking McCarthy. Good for him. But yeah, I don't think anyone saw that. Friends with Messi and David Beckham, John McCarthy, LaSalle's favorite son. But there we are.
There we are.
And if that tells you how much we want to talk about the Orlando game, there you go. There it was.
Yeah, there really wasn't a ton happening in the game to talk about. It was like, okay, we had a few good shots. They had a few good shots. Just nothing went, and that's end of the day. I will say, I thought we created good chances without Kai. We've talked about that before with Kai. Anytime he's out of the lineup, you're kind of like, are we going to create chances? Like, we created a number of chances.
Right.
It was just an element of finishing them. And so it wasn't for lack of chance creation.
No, it's just a lack of literally putting the ball away. And I have to give myself flowers because Chuck and I were talking about Baribo and Damiani, up top together, and I went, "Yeah, you're going to do it." And sure enough, Bradley Carnell listens to the podcast.
Yeah, that's where he's getting all of his coaching advice, I'm sure.
It's the only possible outcome. Yeah,
absolutely.
Do we want to talk about Glavinovic being out for an undisclosed amount of time, or do we want to talk about maybe Daniel Gazdag not being with the team?
I mean, personally, I'd rather prefer to talk about Glavinovic first.
Yeah, because that's a real one that's happened by the time that we've recorded this. Which that's not a good thing.
Yeah,
obviously,
it's not a good thing
to lose kind of a promising sort of defensive piece who looked really good and they did play. Justin, what are you doing about this?
I mean, so I
Not
think it's
personally,
okay. Sitting in Bradley Carnell or Ernst Tanner's shoes, what do you do about this? Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
I mean, I think right now you're okay. You're okay for this weekend, right? You've got Macania who can obviously slot in.
Yep.
But to our point that we've kind of said over and over again, Gazdag cannot play 36 games this year. Like, it would not be good for us as a team if Gazdag is playing every game this year. And so you obviously need something, depending on the severity of Glavanovic's injury. You need something, and so where you find that is going to be tricky. But I think if I were them, I would be. See, this is where it sucks because you just got rid of Brandon Craig, and was supposed to be your guy.
Yeah, I actually literally just had to look that up. I was like, I know he's not ours, but I forgot if he was still on loan or not. And of course, he's not. That's a sale. That's a sale to Montreal. So, thanks. Yeah.
So I think it's
he's gone. Then my first. I mean,
here comes a hot take, I think. Come on.
Yeah, go for it.
No, you give it to me. You were coming up with one, I thought.
All right. Well, I have one. I have been championing the Frankie Westfield center back solution.
That wasn't as hot.
I think you pull Isaiah LaFleur. No, it wasn't. But I'm trying to. Well, none of us can be Paul Catrino Jr. I think we're at the point in our lives where none of us can be Paul. I think you have all of your sort of short term MLS Next Pro loans. I think Isaiah LaFleur has looked very good for the second team at fullback. And actually, for that matter too, so is Nick Perriano. I think you bring in Nick or Isaiah at one of your fullback spots, or you pull Harriel over wide because he's less comfortable there, and I think you move Frankie into the middle because he's so big.
Yeah, that could be a option. My thought
Because
was
I don't trust, like, to your point, like, I don't trust Glesnes anymore. And it sucks whenever we say that on this podcast, someone else that would fill in for him ends up dying. So then we can't like move on from Glesnes. And yeah, the sort of natural fit from the roster last year, Brandon Craig is in Montreal. So you're not getting him back. But I think you can sort of play around a little bit. Again, it depends on how severe this injury is. Hopefully not. He did the surgery already, so the rehab's really the part of it. But yeah, I think you can play around because you're in early season, and then at the end of the year when you really need legs, if guys get injured again or pick up knocks or you're just kind of tired, you can sort of play from there.
Yeah. My thought was like, do you go get an experienced USL championship center back who can
sure
give you minutes and isn't gonna be like isn't gonna be a big risk, and like you could do that one of two ways.
Isn't gonna make a fool of themselves. Yeah,
you could do that one of two ways. You could go get a more experienced guy, and these are not the right names, but I'm thinking like Sean Tosh or Paco Craig, somebody like that who's got some experience. Those are probably not the right names, but like you could go get somebody like that on a year contract, or you go find a 22-year-old and sign him for a couple of years and see what he brings. And worst comes to worst, you send him back to USL on a loan next season.
Right.
Who knows?
Right.
I don't know, but that's the same as kind of bringing up your MLS Next short-term loans. Hopefully, Gliminovich's injury won't be that serious.
That's why No. Yeah, I mean that's the best case scenario is that he's out for 2 months and then you're golden. You can dip into the but I mean that's where like you don't want a guy comes in, does a bit, and then sort of occupies the Ollie Semmel role, sort of, where he just kind of fades in the obscure. I mean, it depends what the number is. And now we have a maybe to be determined amount of money gap at kind of center attacking mid, which I guess we'll talk about. That really the bigger decision you have to make. And talking with our friend Phil Grooms about the rumor, there's sort of one or two or three ways, or my fourth way, that we could get to filling in for Danny if he's gone, which is going to be an interesting development because it looks like it's not going to happen now unless something crazy happens Friday until at least next week.
Yeah. So I guess like, it's worth bringing in the two conversations. I think partly because Glavinovic was a guy you spent a lot of money on too. And so it's like, okay, that was a guy that you were supposed to bring in for several years. He was going to be kind of your starting center back. He was your Jack Elliott replacement in a lot of ways. And so I think a lot of us were kind of obviously had a little bit of knock at the beginning of the year, but we were all kind of like, why are you putting Makanya on the field? You played a lot of money for Glesnes, and not that Makanya did a bad job in any way, shape, or form, other than the red card. But it's like, oh yeah, like Klavinovich was supposed to be that guy. So Tom Bogart has an article up on Give Me Sport that there is a considerable cash fall coming the Union's way from the Columbus Crew for one
at
Daniel
the expense of, which actually, interesting enough, a lot of the Columbus fans in the replies to him, because I mean, Tom does great work. Tom's probably the most, if he's I guess, to maybe flatter him a little bit or to undersell what he does, he's the Fabrizio Romano of MLS, where if Tom Bogart says something's happening, it's probably going to happen. We don't have it set in stone, obviously. There's still time. Someone could get cold feet. Weirdly, a lot of the Columbus fans were worried about Darlington Nagbe at that point, because he just went down last week, so they think it might be kind of a trigger for him. And then also they kind of wanted a striker and not a center attacking mid. Not that Danny can't play up top, but yeah. So when this happens, the question then is, well, what did the Union do? Because we don't really have, really have that on our roster in reserve, but maybe we do. Justin, do you have any initial, again, putting yourself in Bradley Carnell, I guess, in the driver's seat from him for your next couple of fixtures, and then Ernst Tanner maybe down the line? What are you doing here if this happens?
Yeah, I mean, if you're Carnell, I mean, I think you've got to, well, I mean, here's what I hope baseline, right? Baseline, I hope that Tanner and Carnell are working well together, and you would hope in some way, shape, or form this is not Tanner just trying to clear book space or whatever for a future move, thinking we're not competing this year or something or other. You would hope this is Carnell saying, hey, Gazdag's great, not the right fit for my system. So can we move him to get somebody else in? So that's what I hope is happening behind the scenes that we haven't quite heard about, that I don't think we'll actually hear about until something actually happens. And could there be another move happening from the Union side with that money that comes in, inter MLS or not, to replace Gazdag? Who knows? But to that point, I mean, you brought up Phil earlier, and we talked about how, Indy has a affinity with Carnell and seems to be one of Carnell's guys. And so is that that seems to be the short-term solution. I don't know.
My meme solution is you hold Kevin Sullivan hostage from Manchester City and City Football Group, and you basically tell them, all right, you guys can have Kevin if you ignore Inter Miami's discovery rights because you don't know what those are, and just give us Kevin De Bruyne. And then the Union get a world-class center attacking midfielder in exchange for the guy that's going to fill in for Danny being gone. Because I think in the early stages, what you do is it's just Quinn Sullivan up top, unless like you said, I talked about it when the news kind of first broke and we were throwing it around in our group chat, and you're basically free reign and putting the system ahead of everything else. Who are you going after? And they said, well, Indy can play attacking midfield. And I went, great. Did anyone else play attacking midfield for Bradley Carnell at St. Louis and did it well? And they said, yeah. And I'm going to butcher his last name, but Nico Giaconeri, who was with Oh God, where was he? Cincinnati at points, Toronto at points. I think he was with Como in Italy for a little bit. He's in the Greek league now, which is a weird one. They just wrapped up their playoffs. His team did not make it past the 5th place game, which I have questions about. But he's apparently maybe available. He's 24. He's an American citizen. And he's a Carl guy. He was with St. Louis that year, so maybe that's an option, but I don't know. We'll find out, I guess.
My favorite off-base solution for this situation was somebody decided on Reddit that Brendan Aronson is out at Leeds and needs to come home. And I was trying to figure out how do you figure a guy who has played 77 minutes on average this season is out at Leeds. He's not out at Leeds. He's good. He'll be there for a while.
I feel like there's been a couple times where he could have been out at Leeds, and it never happened. So, I think he's good there, which is kind of funny, but also really cool to see. Just because I didn't expect him to stick there, but he's stuck, which is very cool. Still occasionally scoring the random goal that'll pop everyone in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, when he does.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so that's the big one to look out for. Is maybe Gazdag leaving? Who knows?
If you want to bring a guy home, I wouldn't mind Anthony Fontana coming back. But
do you want to have the is he a 10 conversation again? Like, is that you're just really into that? You want to talk about Anthony Fontana's maybe being a number 10?
My thought behind it is we're basically playing a system with 2 number 10s. So, and Quinn Sullivan is not that either.
Yeah, so he could be one of 2. That's right. Okay.
And so I think it's like,
so
we're
really,
kind of playing a system without an 8. So it's like, all right, you have 2 6s and 2 10s on the field. I think it doesn't really matter what your 2 10s look like, if they're true 10s or not.
I mean, is he that from Jack McGlynn though? It's like if the criteria is we just need a guy that can turn on the ball and do right away, I feel like we could have kept McGlynn, and I feel like to your point, like what we're gonna find out kind of at the end of this year or at some point, if when he leaves, is that Danny just didn't really buy into the system and they moved on.
Yeah,
because all of our casualties so far have not been talent; they have just been you don't want to do this, so go do it somewhere else.
I do think that that's part of it for sure, because I think like the system that the Union are playing this year, being high pressing, being more of a team press, all of that, like you have to have 10 field players who all kind of buy into the system, otherwise it just doesn't work. And so how do you if you're not gonna contribute in that way, then it is going to be hard for you to find minutes on the field. That you'd rather have players who may not be as quality but actually do buy into the system. My thought between the difference between McGlynn and Fontana is I do think Fontana is probably slightly more athletic, a little pacier than what McGlynn is. And I think McGlynn for me is like kind of a true 8. Like that's his role. He's not good enough defensively to be a 6. He's not creative enough to be a 10, and so he's like kind of a true 8. And that's kind of the position. We had all these conversations about guys who were true wingers when we weren't playing with wingers. And it's like, all right, they're not the right guys, it's kind of Fafa Pikovs, he was like, cool. He was around when we played with wingers and it was great. And then we switched to a system that didn't have wingers. And all of a sudden there was no place for him. So, and he's still playing.
Well, and to your point, like it's, it's nice to see sort of like the team be like, no, you can't stay here because we're not going to use you. As opposed to the Jim Curtin through the lens of Ernst Tanner, where it's, yeah, you're not a system fit, but we're not going to move on from you. Now Ernst Tanner has to do the job of, I need to find guys that fit, that can make an impact, that can do what I want them to do, and we can stay, where we're at, which is right now in third place in the Eastern Conference, but at least in a playoff spot, and we can get in because, like we talked about over the years, because we've seen the format switch. If you don't make the playoffs in MLS in a given year, you need to change something. Too many teams get in now. You can't go, oh well, we weren't top 6. Like that's fine. It's no. 25 of the 32 teams get in basically. If you don't make it in, start over.
Yep.
So I appreciate that they're not like, we can't find the right money for them or whatever. It's like, no, you can find a partner. You just can't be afraid of losing a guy to another team in your, league with McGlynn. Conference with Columbus is going to be a little bit harder to swallow, but that's where Stanner has to go. I can figure out someone that's going to do what he can do and buy in.
Yeah, and I know the Union have been hesitant to send guys around the league, starters. They've sent plenty of guys who are on the bench, like around the league in
Brandon Craig
times.
Yeah.
Brandon Craig,
Right.
Matt Freese, you can list a whole number of them who they've sent around
any of the
league.
Mats. Yeah.
Keep
going.
But I think it is interesting. A lot of successful teams in MLS have sent guys, starters who have started on their team one year, to another team, and then they found a guy to replace them that just plays that position a little bit differently and seems to improve that position for them. And so multiple teams have done that and have made that work. And that hasn't been something the Union have done. Now they've taken a little bit of a different approach as we sell these guys overseas and then we bring up somebody from the academy. But it seems like that pipeline for the moment in some ways has run dry. And so it feels like it's about time that we maybe pull somebody from a different team, or some of the reporting with Gazdag has been, we're probably looking at more money than what we paid for him. So that's good, that we'll end up with actually more money. So I don't know. It is an interesting query for Bradley Carnell to figure out, and that's why he gets paid the big bucks.
Well, and it's interesting because is there an element of, is it Ernst asking Carnell, is there a guy you want? Here's how much money that's going to cost us. Can we just replace him with one person? Because Giaconeri transfer mark has him at $2 million, which feels a little high given he's in Greece and would probably be more than happy to come back to the U.S. on a little bit of a discount. But if you get 1.5 or 2 from Columbus for Gazdag, then do you just pull the trigger on that and go, here's the guy you liked in St. Louis?
You would think so.
And then, you have like a sort of platoon. Vasilev can play any of the 4 positions you need him to happily. Giaconeri is going to be, or Giacchini is going to be your sort of one of your 2 10s. And then if there's a little bit of a position battle between the Sullivan boys for one of those 8s and one of those 10s, that's not bad.
Yeah, for sure. I think
so maybe that's what it is. I don't know. That makes the most sense. That is like a logical step, I think, to take. But we've never seen the club go out and do something like that does that for a coach.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I feel like we're in a little bit of a weird situation. Like, I don't, no one's going to say this out loud, but I don't think anybody, including probably Ernst and Carnell, thought we were going to be third in the East and competing rather well with just about anybody.
No, not at all. And truly, I think if you ask those two guys, even now, I honestly think if you ask the coach or the GM, like, are we in third place at the end of the season? They'd be like, probably not. We're not far off in their heads, probably, but I think 3 is high. I think a home playoff game is ambitious.
But if you could flip Gazdag for something a little bit more talented,
a playoff team.
Yeah, and if you flip Gazdag for something with a little more talent, a little more pace, a little more buy into the system, who knows what happens?
Yeah, that's It's funny because I don't think we have to look at it from talent necessarily. Because if we're just looking at talent, you can't find anybody that's been playing better than Jack McGlynn was before we moved him, really. I really think this is just, we need everyone to buy in.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that early on, you're going to get moved while we still can move you. So, yeah, it's can we bring someone in that's maybe a little bit younger that we can bring in for a little bit less money, maybe a little bit more money than what we paid for Gazdag, and then have them play the system we need them to play? Maybe. I guess we're going to find out here in a bit.
We are going to find out here in a bit. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Do you start him in New York if he's available on Saturday? Do you play him? Do you risk playing him? How does that work? What goes on there?
I think you risk playing him because what's the worst that can happen? Like, either, unless your other deal, the second deal is like on its way. And if that's true, then you don't play him because you want that second deal to happen. But if that second deal is not quite there yet, then you play him. Absolutely. Because if he gets hurt and then he comes back midseason, it's not like we're hurting, or you could make a trade. You could still do the same deal later in the summer if all teams are still interested, unless Columbus goes out and finds their guy. But I don't know that they're looking for that, other than maybe Gazdag.
I think they have a little conversation with I almost said Portland, with Columbus's brain trust, and you go, can we play him for 45 minutes, please?
Yeah.
Then if they go, yeah, that's fine, you go, thank you so much. You pull him after 45, you bring on Kevin, you see how that goes.
Yeah, but I'm not going to be super disappointed if you're the advanced midfield this weekend is Sullivan and Vasilev. I'm not going to be like, oh man, sucks, now we're going to lose. I think I trust both those guys.
No,
I definitely trust Sullivan to this point, but I mean, Vasilev I definitely trust too. And so I think it's like, I would like to see Vasilev over the course of 90 minutes. He's not going to get that with Gazdag in the lineup. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. But I think it'll be interesting to watch what happens with Gazdag this weekend. Is kind of a, if there's smoke, there's fire kind of situation. So we'll see.
Bogart's not
do
usually
you want to
wrong.
give? No, he hits very often, especially when he's that confident about something. That's usually a good or bad sign, depending on what camp you fall into. Exactly. Do you want to give some scoreline predictions for a game on illegitimate Field FC?
Yeah, we could talk about it for a second. New York City comes in. They haven't won since March 15th. They are, they're on a streak. They tied Columbus 0-0. They lost to Atlanta 4-3 in Atlanta, and then they lost to Minnesota 2-1. And so they're kind of on a 3 games without a win streak. They had won 2 in a row, and then other than that, they haven't won. So they're not a team in good form.
Well, we should say, if you want like a proper preview, you're talking to some friends of ours literally in like 10 minutes about that game. So go listen to that, because you'll have that's a proper breakdown in the works there.
Yes. I think the current system that we're playing plays better on that field than the last couple times that we've played there.
Oh, absolutely.
So I do think it could be possible that we come out with a win this time. And to the score line, 2-1 maybe.
Tricky. I think Matt Freeze always kind of plays up against us. Not that I think there was any maliciousness behind the move. It's just hey, I could be that guy. But yeah, I think with a proper pressing system and just kind of the weird fluidity and end to end this that NYCFC seems to value playing, which is kind of funny. This could be the game where you have your 6 goals again. So yeah, I think it's going to be a high scoring contest. I think the Union win like 3-1 maybe, but any points you can take from New York City, because we don't see them again until the end of October or the beginning of October. I don't think is the return.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you're just trying to win your series against teams, and I think this is a game that you can definitely walk away from City Field or whatever with 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's on the other field. At least it's not on the other field, and it's on that one. But yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I think I feel more confident going to this game than the last couple of years going in NYC, and so I think it's going to be it could be a game where we get wins. So that's what we think. Let us know what you think. You can find us at VFTV Pod all over the internet, whether you are on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you find us. You can find us at VFTV Pod and let us know what you think is going to happen against NYCFC and how you replace Daniel Gazdag if that rumor comes true. But other than that, we'll be back with more Union content very, very soon.
Very soon. And now it uploads.
Oh, geez.
I'm going to be really mad if this takes longer than like 5 minutes, because I was downloading like 16 or 50 gigabyte video games last night at a blistering speed. And like